Hey there, this is Sen from Iceland Gaming. Welcome to this recording. I'm doing this as a second take from today's stream since I had internet issues and I had several dropouts and the frame rate was all over the place. I thought I'll do another recording, another take, and upload this to YouTube so you can have the full experience and actually hear and see all that I'm doing. It is the Game Dev Toolbox and we're looking at Flowscape again. It's a second look at Flowscape. There's various topics that we'll cover today, among them some questions from the community that were asked between the last stream and today, and also in the last stream, which I didn't really cover at the time, so let's get going. One thing that I wanted to show you is a neat feature that's kind of hidden in the home menu, and this is Map. If you click on Map, it will show you this little widget, and you can click Ortho, and you will get an orthographic view of the current scene. Now, this is brilliant if you are a DM or a dungeon master and you play tabletop games and want to use this kind of feature to, or this kind of tool to create really, really good looking maps. Now, there's a few functions you can do. You can place a grid over it to have the kind of reference, and you can scale it. So you can scale it to whatever grid size you want. You can do huge maps like that, which cover probably a whole, I don't know, whole island or something, to really, really small things like a dungeon or so, or a room even. Now you can do all this with this little slider here. The other one is opacity. Opacity means how visible the grid is on the thing, from zero, we're not seeing it at all, to really, really bright. Now the thing is, you can click size to make the grid lines bigger or thicker, and this is required because if you go for the hex instead of the square grid, this is really, depending on the size, it's a bit hard to see. And if you click on the size, it probably doubles the thickness of the lines, and the grid is visible. Also, the opacity works the same way. Now this is the map feature. Now, what you do once you're happy with the setup and the layout and the size of the grid and everything is fine, you can do saves of the map as PNGs. Now, you can do it 1 time the screen size. In this case, it's 1080p. You can 2 times and 4 times. So you can go for a maximum of 4 times your screen size. If you go full screen and you have a 3K monitor, you can go up to 10K, 12K resolution images, which is huge. It's even fit for print. So you can print out the images if you want to have them on the table and really physically use them. There is another button, Arkenforge. I was a bit surprised when I first saw that, but this is actually a tool which allows you to make maps for tabletop games. So it's a specific tool made for DMs to design maps, plan encounters, write down information for D&D campaigns, for Pathfinder campaigns, for any kind of tabletop campaign. But this is really cool. This is Arkenforge. You look it up on the internet. It's a tool which is in beta or something, or a really alpha beta stage. You can download a demo. I've done that. I've had a look at it, and it's promising. It shows promise. Now, this is maps. Now, one thing that we kind of skipped over in the last stream is 2 important things you do when you're painting the landscape, when you're working with the brushes, like going to the selection and going for a brush, for a bush really, and then painting. You see how the bushes grow. Now, there's a few things that are special when painting the landscape. You might want to have, let's say, a really strong rock formation, but you don't want, if you paint, you don't want the plants to grow on rocks like this. You don't want that. If you don't want that, you can use the filters in this program, and there's 3 of them. It is the paint layers that you turn on and off. The first one is the terrain, the second one is rocks, and the third one is water. So if you turn off the rocks layer and you try to paint on, I'm clicking but nothing happens. But if I go over to the landscape, suddenly it works again. So the application is filtering out the rock surfaces, so you can only paint on the water in this case and on the landscape. If you click it on again and you click off the landscape, you can go for the landscape, nothing happens. If you go over the rock, suddenly the plants start growing again. So this is useful if you want to limit your painting to a specific type, whether it's terrain, rock, or as I said, water. This is also helpful if you place fish or any kind of water creatures. Just restrain it to the water area and you're good to go. So this is the first thing, the first filtering thing that you can do in a scene. This is for painting mainly. Now the other thing you can do is you can hide and show objects. So if you have a lot of things going on in the scene or in the landscape, it might be useful to show or hide certain things. So go for the little bulb icon up here and it will show you various icons. If you go for the first, this is turning the trees on and off. Now the next one is turning the bushwork on and off. Then after that there's grass work and flowers, flower patches, stuff like that. And then there is the little rocks. You see it if you have a closer look. Go here, see what happens if we turn this on and off. You see it, the small rock stuff goes away. And if we have animals in the scene like we do here, switching this on and off would hide or show the animals. And by the way, you can do the same with lights as well. So if you have a light in the scene and you want to turn it off, you see what happens. This turns off the light that was placed in the scene. Let's actually delete it. So these are the two filters. One is used for painting. The other one is used for just showing or hiding object types in the scene. Now, one other thing that's really interesting, and let's actually clear out the whole thing for this, is procedural generation. Now, if we want to procedurally populate this map or this scenery, we can use the procedural generation tool. Click on it, and there's two sliders, and there is one type of item selected when you go for this. You can see I can change it over here, and it updates in here as well. Now, tweak these two sliders to make sure that the red is visible and the blue is visible. Actually, let's create another map which is easier to showcase the effect. Now there's the red, as you see, and there's the blue. This is hate based. So this is hate based painting. Let's actually take this one. I think it's even easier to see if we use kind of an incline. Now you see what happens. Now this is the water line that we have marked with the red. And the blue one we can place wherever it wants. So it's hate based, and between the two barriers, let's say, if you press go, the system will automatically populate randomly the area with the selected item. You can click stop or stop the generation, go for another, I don't know, type of bush like this one, go for a different height a bit, like this, and then go for procedural placement again, and it starts growing the work or the item or the plant, whatever you have chosen. This is extremely useful if you want to cover a large area in a natural way. The placement is quite natural, it's kind of random, and it fits usually quite well. And as I mentioned, it is hate based. These are two hate sliders. I think it's visible the best if we go for a kind of volcanic setting where you see immediately what I mean. You go for these two things, you set the hates where this needs to go, and you click on go, and it places them in this area. So this is the procedural generation tool that Flowscape offers. Now, there's been a few questions by the community, as I mentioned. I want to go over them quickly. One was camera animation. Can the camera be animated? And there's two answers to that. Yes, it can. But the other thing I want to say is it's extremely limited. So what you can do is you can place the camera, the viewpoint of the camera somewhere like this. You can press start. Then you go to the endpoint where you want the camera to be when you have finished the animation, click end, and then you click play, and it starts at the beginning and goes moves towards the end. And you can increase the speed, you can play it again, so the speed is faster now, you can go as quick as you want, but that's it. One thing that you need to know, this is a pure path. The camera just takes a path, but it does not take into account where the camera is facing. So if I go to a different location, let's say I want to start here, put the start here, and I want to fly down here, and I want to change my rotation of the camera. I want to face these plants, and click the end. If I start playing, you will see that I'll look into nothing. This is because the camera is starting at the right point and it's moving at the right direction, but it's facing nowhere. It's actually you will see that when I change the angle a bit and then start again. The animation is correct, but the camera is facing in the wrong way. So the animation path is safe, but not the camera orientation. This is a limiting factor. This is limiting what you can do with this thing. So keep that in mind when you use the tool. If you want to have a quick, let's say, a slow-paced light over the scenery, you can do that quite easily. And then you use an external software like OBS or like any other tool to save the animation. I mentioned this in the last stream. The Flowscape software doesn't allow you to export animations. You need to capture them, but this is quite easy. Just fire up OBS or any kind of capture software, press space to hide the UI, do an animation, do whatever you want, and then capture it and save it. It will capture the audio and the video. And there you go. You have the MKV file. You can convert it to MP4 and use it in whatever editing software that you can imagine. So this is the camera animation thing. Another question that was asked was, can we walk in first person? Yes, you can. So there's this little button up here, which if you're over land and you press it, you will drop down to the surface, and you can now walk the surface. You have to press F again to go into flight mode, so to speak, and then you're able to move freely and go up and down and in all directions. This is the walk in first person feature that the application offers. The next question was water in general. What can you do with water? There's a few things. If you go to the button up here, you have this little icon here. This is the, let's say, water object. Click on it, and you have this body of water. Just place it in the scene, go for the movement, rotation, translation tool, and move it where you want it. Now, once you have selected an object, a shortcut to translate, rotate, or move or scale an object is to press 1 for translation, 2 for rotation, and 3 for scale. So the number keys, not on the number pad, but on the main keyboard. 1, 2, and 3. 1 for translation, 2 for rotation, 3 for scale. Now you want to scale it to the size that you see it fit. Place it up and down in all directions that you want to go, and you're good. This is let's say a lake or kind of a pond you can do with this. What you can also do with this, if you click on the same item again, you will see that it also allows you to use the mouse wheel to rotate. If you want to do a waterfall, you would use this, and then again place it as you wish and work with this. One thing that you need to keep in mind is the sound comes automatically with the object. I have found no way of changing the volume, so it's really, really loud. If you put this object in a scene, it will make noise, and I have no idea how to switch it off or how to make it louder or less loud. I don't know that. I think it's just a given thing. So the next thing you can do with water is go to the object again, scroll. This is flowing water. So you see there's this animation happening, and you use this kind of object to do streams, to do little currents, to show movement in the water, like in a river, for example. So you have a selection of them: curved, fully curved, less curved, and straight. So you can rotate them, fix them, mix and match them. So you can do any kind of shape straight on, curving, whatever you want. So this is the options that you have for small to medium-sized water surfaces. You can do lakes, you can do rivers, you can do waterfalls, you can do all that. Now the big thing, or the big water, so to speak, item is the ocean. The ocean has its own setting. So you go for this icon here, you click the ocean icon and it will turn on the ocean. You see it automatically goes towards the horizon, so it meets the kind of the skybox, and it immediately looks correct. It does the right reflections, it gives you all the kind of reaction to the sun. So this is everything that is in here. Now the things you can do with this is really cool. Now one thing is the waves. You can change I think it's the wave seed. You can have different waves. Now this is a big one, the wind speed. See what happens if I turn this up. Now the wind gets more choppy, it gets more stormy, you have black or blue or black water situations. Now this is something which is really cool if you combine it with foam. For example, if I turn up the wind speed and add some foam, look how this feels entirely differently. This is a rough sea, this is a storm coming, this is really a strong waves. Now you can play with this as much as you want. You can change the wind direction to fit your mood. You can have the choppiness, how the waves chop. You can change the reflection to be less, it could be rather extreme. And this is also something which is cool, the absorption. If you look at this area on the water here, see how it changes when I change the slider. So what I'm doing here is I'm telling it what color is absorbed if something is on the water, depending on the difference of the from the surface to the object. If I absorb a lot of red, it will turn greenish. If I absorb nothing, it will stay the same. If I absorb a lot of green, it will look artificial and purplish. If I absorb a lot of blue, it will go into the green again. So probably absorbing red will be the most realistic one, but this is how you would get this kind of watercolor or immersion that you want if you have a scene where you're standing close to water and you see the ground underwater. This is what you can do with oceans. Now there's of course a ton of things that you can tweak. You would use a matching sun setting, you would use a matching skybox to make this really, really dramatic, or calm, or whatever you want to say with your image or with your animation. But the tool here is rather cool. And I do like the realisticness or the realism of this, of the animation. I would assume it's a Tessendorf shader, but I'm not quite sure. But I like the realism. It's really well done. So this is that. The last question that we're covering today is size of the landscape. So there's two aspects to that. If you look at this piece of landscape, you can change it in various ways in regards to size. One is you just increase the terrain size. You see what happens. Let's go a bit further away. You see what happens. Probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times or even 10 times the size. I cannot really know because there's no information here, just a slider. You can do huge terrains. Another aspect of that is the tiling. So if you want a bigger terrain, you see that the water goes away, the plants go away. So if you change terrain size, always do this first as the first step. You see what happens with the plants. The plants stay in world space. They're not linked to object, to local space. So they will go all over the place. I can show you better if I increase the size, place a few trees, go back to the slider, and now I decrease the size. You will see that the trees are suddenly floating in space. This is not good. So this is actually kind of an omission on the tool side. This should be in object space, not in world space, if possible. I don't know how they did it. but this should be tied to the object, to the landscape. Now keep this in mind. If you scale the terrain size, if you change the terrain size, do it as the first step and then go for the rest. As I mentioned, there's another aspect to it. If you want to make the landscape appear bigger, you will probably go for tiling. Now, if you go close, you will see this kind of falls apart. This looks like a tiny thing now. I'm actually not believing that this is a volcano or something like that. A volcano. Now, if I increase the tiling and I go for something like this, suddenly it appears huge. It appears far larger because I've tiled the ground texture very, very, very small. This makes it seem further away. So this is kind of a trick that you use to increase the scale or the appearance of scale in this program. Now these are just a few options that we covered, that we missed in the last stream. I hope you enjoyed it and see you next time with another tool. Bye bye.